I
Actually, we
don't
could
know.
start. We could start with that, talking
I,
about breaking down the fourth wall.
I don't even know what wall you're talking about.
Do you know? Have you heard that before? Breaking down the fourth wall.
No.
So typically, breaking down the fourth wall. This actually would be. I think this will be. I think this might actually be a good lead into what we were talking about before. So breaking down the fourth wall is. I guess it kind of probably comes from theater originally,
Hmm.
but it has to do where if you're performing, let's say, in a box, which is kind of like your stage. So typically, a stage, if you were to imagine it, would have a part of the back at the top of the stage would be like this, and then you'd have a back wall like this, and then it'd be like this. So you'd be kind of be performing in a box. Now, there's an assumed so if there's an assumed view right now, even if anyone's watching our feed right now, that I'm kind of inside of a space. And whether or not I talk to you right now, I look out at you, or if I'm just like this, there's an assumption that I'm inside of a space. Breaking down the fourth wall from an audience member's perspective is where you address the audience directly, or the audience
Oh,
feels like they're being addressed directly. So you're sort of jumping through, like it's almost a bad example in this case because we're constantly
but I get it.
tip.
So it's like if because I get it. So for example, like as you're talking,
Mm-hmm,
if you want to do it that way, I could just look right into my camera
mm-hmm.
and make comments about you to the
That
audience.
would be exactly it.
Okay.
Or even something more subtly. And The Office did this all the time.
Yeah,
They'd
they do
be
it on TV now. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they're talking, and they just sort of
Right.
and then you feel like you're because and then the value of that. Sorry, the feeling of that for an audience is pretty complex sometimes. I'm imagining at some point an audience member sat there and was really wigged out by the fact that, let's say, they're watching a play, some
Hmm.
sort of production about Jack the Ripper. Just use an example. And then all of a sudden, Jack the Ripper looks out into the audience, and you feel like he's talking directly to you. And he's like, who should be my next victim? Right? And then you're like, woo! Like, Jack the Ripper's talking to me. Like, you feel that connection. I'm imagining for others, it trips that emotion like you feel like you should respond. I will give you a for instance. So back in the day when back in university, I did theater. That was part of my degree, and there were a couple performances that. So props to University of Guelph, fantastic theater program. They had a stage there called Massey Hall, and it was I guess a two-floored, almost like a round. I think it was roundabout. It felt like it was round, but basically on the main floor they had what would almost felt like a massive studio space, and we had one-act festivals in there. So one of the courses in my program is that there would be a short list of, and I think it was a fourth year. I think it was a fourth year course. Individuals that wanted to go on and become directors, they would apply, they would have a one act play, and basically from a long list of individuals that wanted to produce and direct a play, a short list would be selected. And then what they did is they did open auditions within the department and the university to be in this play. So I managed to get into a couple of those, and I don't remember which one that I was in. It might have been one. I think it was one called Jerry and Tom, and it was about assassins, basically. Two dudes, two kind of like family men that are assassins, and it kind of mixed the script up a bit about like it bent the genre a little bit because both a lot of the time we spent talking on the stage about well how tough it was to sort of manage our regular life and be an assassin, and what happens when your car breaks down, and what happens when you're trying to sort of like be a good father, and we're an assassin. I'm starting to see some parallels between our podcast and this play right now, got to be honest. But it was the decoding basically of assassin's life. And in one of the scenes, So it was an older assassin and a younger assassin. I played the younger assassin, so the one that was just kind of learning the craft, wanting to jump right in, just kind of get it done. And the other character was the older assassin. So in one of the scenes, we've been given a job, and I'm standing at the fourth wall, which is basically the front of the stage, and I'm talking out over the audience. Okay. Now, in the actual stage directions, I'm imagining, I think we were in Florida. I think we were kind of like in a motel room. We were kind of setting up our next job. And I had kind of walked either to the door of the motel room or I was standing at the window kind of looking out. But it really was, I wasn't addressing the audience. I was just looking out over the audience. Dude was over behind me, kind of sitting in a chair reading the newspaper. So I've got my back to him and I'm kind of going off on a monologue like, what am I supposed to do? Now, in the what am I supposed to do conversation, I was talking about what implement to use to kill our next target. What am I going to use? And at some point, I think I indicated something like, I don't know, do I use a knife or do I use a fork? Like I was kind of doing, is it this or is it that? In the audience, my grandmother was sitting. She was sitting in the audience. And as I'm sort of working it out, what should I use? What should I use? What should I use? From somewhere out in the dark, and I couldn't quite place where she was. So imagine I'm standing right near the front of the stage. I'm kind of looking up over the audience, just kind of doing this frenetic monologue. I say, should I use a knife? Should I use a gun? I hear, and everyone hears, because this wasn't a big space, my grandmother, use the spoon. She responds to me like I'm talking to her. And the whole audience starts laughing. Little old lady, she's probably 60, 65 years old, highly accented English. Like it was literally, it was almost a caricature of a grandma. That was the sound of her voice. Use the spoon, ha 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 ha, and she starts laughing at her own joke. So it's that whole breaking of the fourth wall. I've kind of lived it, got kind of uncomfortable with it, and I think why would I tell this story? So the breaking of the fourth wall, because in our on ramp, I think I felt like we were kind of trying to talk about this fourth wall, as in when it comes to podcasting or being, let's say, an EDU creator where you're putting out your thoughts and something like this. What elements of it draw the audience in? Like, what is it that compels an audience to feel like you're talking directly to them? And by extension, we're also talking about the use of Patreon. Like, so if there's something that makes you feel so compelled and so connected with a piece of, a product that somebody makes that you would actually want to pay to help them or support their product. Damn, I don't even know where I'm going with this. Maybe I'll end with this. So where I felt like this whole Patreon discussion gets kind of interesting. Couple things is, one, I wonder, how do you know? How do you know that your audience or your product is ready to be shifted into a monetizing model? Like, how do you really know that? Like, how would you sort of gather that data? Two, I wonder about the influence that you can actually have on the product if you are a contributor. Or is it just basically an allowance, as in you're just giving them money to do what they're going to do? Three, and this is my final, and I would, if anyone's out there listening and anybody knows, one of the things I haven't come across yet when it comes to Patreon products, it's kind of twofold. One, where the cost associated, let's assume that the ask is to recover the costs associated with the product. Let's assume that's part of the ask. For the individual maker to produce or reveal those costs, to sort of say up front, here's what it costs to put this out. every month or every week, whatever the actual product is. And the second layer to that, kind of connected, kind of not connected, is that there'd be some sort of a social justice or social equity project that's associated with it, as in, here's my costs, here's my base cost to get this quality of a product out every week. Anything that I get in from my from this account that is above that line is going to go to some sort of a project that you, my listener, can feel good about contributing to. It's not just, it's not being kept in sort of escrow in between. I'm not going to bank it and hold it. So I know my costs. I'm going to keep putting out this product, and anything that comes in above that cost line, I'm going to put that towards a breakfast program, or I'm going to put it towards a shelter somewhere. I'm going to put those extra costs somewhere. And I guess I just need to tell the funny story of my grandmother talking to me while I was on stage. But that fourth wall, breaking through the fourth wall, what is it that actually makes people feel like that product is talking or connecting directly with them, or the individual that's making it is talking or directing it specifically at someone?
So what's the fifth wall? Because you, before we came on, you were talking about breaking down the fifth wall. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then you said, do you know about the fourth wall? And I'm like, no.
I think I just made a mistake.
Oh, gotcha.
But
Okay. That happens, eh?
yeah, but I'll edit that out in our Patreon version.
Okay. So speaking of all this Patreon nonsense, I'm calling it nonsense.
Okay.
Yesterday, I had a meeting with my vice principal and the school board's innovation consultant. And it was funny because I don't know how the podcast came up, but it came up and innovation consultant said she listens sometimes and just checks it out, which is cool. And then my vice principal said that sometimes she's told by other people, hey, you were mentioned in the podcast, go and listen and see what was said. And in that moment, I in that moment, it brought a smile to my face. Like, it was just cool to hear about a couple of people I work with and how every now and again they check us out and they listen into what we're talking about and then maybe provide some feedback on the topic or whatever, however it played out. I see, for me, that's pretty cool. I don't need them to spend their money to get behind a wall to hear me talk about something else, or for you to edit out the stuff that maybe, you know, the polished version of what we do is behind a paid wall. I'm sorry, I don't get it. I don't get it. And you and I were talking on the on-ramp about the cost and what would we do with that money. And I'm so happy to hear you say that, you would want to put some of that money towards some type of social justice initiative or something to make the world a better place. Not that just we were pocketing the money. And my thing was, I was saying to you, hey, if people were going to give us money, it would pay for the storage where we keep our audio, because we pay for that, or I pay for that. Chris hasn't given me any money for that, so I'm paying for audio storage. And then if we had any other money, my recommendation would be, I mean, I like your idea, but I wasn't thinking of your idea. My recommendation would be that we just put it towards the cost of the internet that we use to make this happen. So what people are actually doing, like what you're doing, taking money from others, unless this is your living, this is how you make a living, I don't understand. I don't understand what you're doing with it. I mean, if you just come out and say, hey, it buys me a couple of meals during the week while I'm at work. Thanks for showing me some love. I can have Subway twice a week instead of once a week. I don't know. And I don't care. You and I were talking about apps we pay for. I have one app out of all the apps I've ever used over, I don't know how many years of having devices like this. I pay for one app, and it's the video app. And anybody who knows me knows that I like to make videos. I like to do them professionally, like with school. I like to do them on the side with hockey. I just play with it. I love using the editor. That brings me enough joy and value to pay for yearly. And that's it. I don't pay for anything else. In fact, one of my biggest pet peeves is finding a cool app. It lets you do like one tiny little thing for free. And then when you click on the other options, it's like, okay, subscribe here, pay $60 a month or a year, whatever, and you're in. I'm like, nope, delete, gone. I'll find another way to do this. I'm not paying for that. It doesn't bring me the joy or the value that I would expect. And maybe it's because I'm cheap. I don't know. I just feel like my funds are limited, so I can't be blowing it left, right, and center. It just kills me that if you and I decided that we were gonna have a Patreon account, I don't even know what we would offer people, because we've said it several times. This is what we do. We come on every week. We do an hour and change of talking about our lives in school and work and other cool stuff. At the very end of the day, it's two buddies talking. We try to bring in some of the stuff that we do with work and family, but really, if nobody was watching and nobody had subscribed to the channel or to the podcast, I think we'd still be doing it, because we're not doing it for that. So when I see podcasts out there who are like, pay me this much and you'll get to see this, this, and this, I guess if it brings you value, it makes you happy, it meets a need, then that's great. But for the most part, I don't get it. Especially some of the, I'm going to call them the ma and pa shops podcasts. People like you and I doing this type of thing. There's a few, I'm not going to name them, but they're like, hey, why don't you subscribe? Give me some of your money and I'll give you one or two extra stuff. It's not even a business. Like, people, the reason why I stop like that is because I'm filtering what I want to say. So what I really want to say, I'm not going to say, because it's not appropriate. It's not appropriate for what I'm doing here. So I need to stop and think about what I'm going to say and how I'm going to say it. This came up yesterday too, when I was talking to these fine educators. I have a job. I'd like to keep my job. So some of the things I want to say aren't going to be said, because this is a plot. Like, the beauty of this is that it gets posted to YouTube and it's there forever. That's pretty cool. But it's also, there's a responsibility factor on my part. People want to make money. Hey, I'd love to make money too. There's no money in education. There's no money in this sector. You could write a book and quit your job, and yeah, you'll make some money. Here's the other thing. People want to be cool. People want to be liked. I want to be liked, but there are certain things I'm not willing to do. And I'm not willing to play on the whole psychology and sociology of trying to get people to feel important by giving me money to get a product that they can get for free. And I think that's where I'm at with that whole thing, Chris. People want to make people feel good. There's nothing wrong with feeling good. It's just, we could charge you to watch this, but guess what? You're not going to pay, number one. And number two, if you do pay, you're not going to get anything any different than what you're getting now, because Chris and I don't have time to do it. I'm not giving this more time. I don't have a golden mic to polish. This is it. I even put away my good mic because I was so bothered with the sound quality coming from it. And look at me. I got my own space, right? I've got this really nice room I'm in, but the sound sucks. So I put this thing on, and for anybody who's not watching, I'm wearing the headset with the mic attached, hoping that to my ears this sounds better, because I was just tired of listening. Imagine somebody paying us. I've got this beautiful, expensive mic that's supposed to be the bomb, and they're like, wow, Roland sounds like crap. Why am I paying, $5 a month for this? Exactly. Exactly. Some of my counterparts in education want you to spend your money on their podcast, but you're not getting anything extra. We've got a live feed here, right? And this was Chris's idea 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. He's like, dude, if we're gonna do this podcast thing that you want to do, let's video record it. People can watch it if they want. I was like, I don't know. Him and Han, I'm like, yeah, let's give it a shot. Nobody's gonna watch anyway. And it's kind of, we have some subscribers and it's fun. And sometimes people actually message us and talk to us about the content, the things we talk about. That's cool. It's fun. I like it. But I barely have time for this. So these people who are polishing their golden mics, it's killing me. It's killing me. That's all I have to say about that, Chris. Anything else I want to say, I can't say because it's not appropriate.
Goes directly to the Patreon feed.
I guess that would be awesome. If you want to pay, I guess I would take your money for you to see the unfiltered Roland, which I would argue people see like
on the daily.
On the daily when I'm not standing in front of a group of kids, or
you could carry a bucket around with you.
I could carry a bucket around with me?
Yeah, and you could just on the front of the bucket you would write Patreon. And as soon as someone throws something in the bucket, you could say something.
Oh, I could give them
more value.
Of more value.
I'd really like to. I'd like to comment on that. And you just hold out the thing, and on the front of it you put Patreon.
Drop the money, and then I'll tell you what I'm really thinking.
Okay.
Or the inappropriate version, maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
Kind of like the old school telephones. Insert another 25 cents to continue this conversation. I got no change.
I don't have it. Yeah.
So it's funny. I like that this exists. I like the idea that this exists too, because I think it sparks up some really interesting conversations around how we value what we do. And I like that. I like sort of like messing with this a little bit. It also lights me up because I feel like I'm in a ton of conversations that I'm constantly asking this question about why people are willing to pay big time speakers to come to the school, to kind of like, why are we buying advice that could very easily be solicited by the specialists in the school? And if we're not getting those specialists in the school talking about what they do that's cool in their classroom, I have a problem that we don't have a sharing economy that would allow us to share for free. Yet we have a paying economy that makes us think like we have to outsource the training. Like I have a real, that really bugs me. And I think in some ways it's probably, probably more prevalent in the American districts. There are individuals there that is, when I try and think of the people that are actually capitalizing on this and making money from their work that's done adjacent to public education, I think there are far more individuals that have managed to monetize public EDU in the States and find jurisdictions and districts that are willing to pay for that kind of stuff. I think it's happening up here. I think there are individuals that have managed to kind of find clients within public education, and by default making teachers that wouldn't normally pay for content kind of paying clients of the same sort of system. You're sort of inadvertently being drawn into it. And I don't know if enough people are sort of talking about this as a general conversation. I definitely think that not enough people are talking about it in a way of how it's changing, how it's slowly changing the conversation about education. And the idea that we can pay before I offer my sage advice on this topic. Let's talk about paying me, a direct fee for each word that I kind of lay out. That's it it changes, I think, our sense of safety and willingness to participate in what I naturally feel is a part of public education, which is the collaboration, the connectivity, the I got your back. I'm not gonna pull your shirt off. I'm not gonna rip your shirt off while off your back while I'm helping you. Um, and the last part to this is that there's still I've had conversations with colleagues that what we're talking about right now is happening in many ways away from some of the people that I connect with every day. Like they're not connected online in a way that this conversation would have any relevance to them. Yet I would argue that it is impacting their existence in the classroom. The whole conversation about commodifying public education is commodifying, monetizing is the exact conversation, a part of the same broader conversation right now that is happening with our government. How do we make money from education? And it's fascinating. It's just, like I said, I like this discussion because it forces us to talk about stuff that is not necessarily comfortable to us. And if we've never talked about the monetization of public education, well, the conversation is going to go on without you. If you decide not to do it, it's going to go on without you. And that sometimes the decisions being made there will affect you. Maybe not immediately, maybe not in the long term, maybe just as you retire. But the whole e-learning conversation, I can't help but feel it's somewhere in the galaxy. It's somewhere in the galaxy of conversations. You can sort of kind of like leapfrog from convo to convo to convo, and eventually someone's going to say, oh yeah, and that education podcast that decided to sort of move to Patreon, is that a part of this? Is that a part of making money from public education in a way that I hadn't thought of before? That's what I was thinking. That's what you got me thinking. That's what we got each other thinking. That's why this is good thinking.
So this leads me to, I want to ask anybody who's currently listening to this episode right now or watching this episode right now, we would love it if you sent us both a message, one of us a message to tell us, would you pay for any of this stuff that we talk about?
Like you and me?
Yeah. Like anybody who's currently listening to us right now.
Is there a multiple choice there? Like, are we, or just...
No, I want to know if any, and sometimes, rarely, but sometimes people reach out to us and talk about, hey, you guys were talking about this on this episode of the podcast. Anybody who's currently listening to this podcast right now or watching it on YouTube right now, I would love it if you took a minute and you just hit one of us up and said, hey, it's like I wouldn't pay for this, or I would pay for this.
Our own market research right now, bro. I don't know if I was prepared for this.
First of all, if anything, we'll get one message in a month and a half.
It's true.
Okay, so that's number one. Number two, the person that messages us will be honest about it. I think they will. I don't think there's anything here to pay for. Personally,
here's the thing I'll say. So are you? Well, let's add something to this. Post it flat out. Post it right on our Twitter feed. Are you cool with that? I said it. Someone's going to do it. The whole idea of like you don't need to DM me when I actually when I post this out. My small part, I post this out with the little scribble that I'm doing down here. When I post that out and I say, here's what we're talking, that thing that I do every week. Say flat out, thanks for doing this for free. I would not pay for this, but I'm cool. I'm appreciative that this is kind of a free thing. I don't mind if that's a bit of a call out on that.
I'm good with that. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like if people want to, that's fine. I may start doing that with some of the things I listen to. To be honest, your suggestion is great, and I think I'm going to take heed. And I think maybe this week I'm going to tweet out a couple of people and say, I just listened to this episode of your podcast. Thank you very much for making it available for free. I enjoy it, and I'm glad that it's accessible to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do that enough, but I'm glad that we're talking about this because now it makes me think it's important for me to do that to other people as well. I think that's lacking. Like, not enough people are telling their friends or acquaintances that they appreciate what's happening. I know that there's a little bit of that with the whole work action that Ontario teachers are taking. And I have to say, I'm going to shift gears now. I'm going to talk about when I was out on Tuesday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So on Tuesday, the Ontario Catholic Teachers Association, every teacher in Owecta was out walking the streets. It was our day of strike, and there was a lot of positive support sent our way. My wife made a comment. She had a different shift than I, so when she was out on her shift on the picket line, she told me that there was a lot of positive stuff, a lot of positive feedback from the people, the public, and then same thing for me. When it was my shift and I was out, I heard a couple of my colleagues tell me that they were that they had received negative feedback, but only like 3 or 4, and then I heard lots of honks, lots of people waving. In fact, my favorite thing was as we were. So my crew was in Elmira, a little town right outside Waterloo, and we were walking in their downtown core, 2 or 3 blocks kind of thing. And my favorite part were the people coming out of the coffee shops and stuff that literally, like, as we were walking by, they'd look at us and say, "Thank you for everything you do. We support you." As they're grabbing their sandwich or their coffee, getting back in their car and leaving. And you know what? I appreciated that. But here's where Roland goes south like he normally does. Whether they appreciate it or not, I'm doing it anyway. Right? So for all the cool dudes that were giving my colleagues the finger as they drove past them, that's cool, man. That's your opinion. We're going to do what we do anyway, whether you support us or not. And I tell you, I don't know how this is going to play out, but every teacher union in Ontario isn't for what's happening. And I know that the officials, our elected officials, are saying, they don't believe that the rank and file agree with their union leaders. And I have to tell you that from the conversations I've had with my colleagues, we do support our union leadership and we do believe in what's happening. Having said that, and you may agree on this point, it does really suck to lose a day's worth of pay. I mean, who wants to lose a day's worth of pay, right? That stinks. But my feeling is years from now, when I look back on, and I don't know how many days I'm going to be on strike. I've only gone on 1 so far. I believe you've done 2. Have you done 2?
We've done 3.
You personally have done 3?
Wait. Oh my God, I can't even believe I'm dropping this. So there was the one that was the first one. The first one that was the everyone out. And then we had a second one. Oh, this is going to come back to bite me.
Well, at least 2. You've been off at least 2 unpaid days, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So they've taken more money away from you than from me. Or maybe I shouldn't put it that way. We've given our money back because, and I when I was out there thinking about the pay increase, I didn't walk for pay increase. I don't think you walk for pay increase either. The proposals will dismantle our system, and they will make it very difficult for students to come in years to come. And my son's going into high school next year, so I'm going to do what I can to show my support against what the government wants to do, because I know that won't lead my son to success. So that's a very selfish reason, but hey, I'm a taxpayer and I'm a parent and I'm a voter, and so I have the right to speak about that. And I suspect I'll be out again. I don't know. I'm not privy to anything that my union leadership is putting together, but I will tell you that at the moment I do support my leadership, my union leadership, and I believe in what all four unions are saying, what they're doing. The fact that we're all on the same page says it speaks loudly. And there was I felt unified for those few hours that I was out there with my colleagues, and I felt the support of the people, but I'm doing it regardless. So you can say what you want about teachers. You can give us the bird when you drive by as we're on the street picketing. It makes no difference to me. I don't need your permission, right? Like, I just don't. And this is something that's come to me over the years. Like, when I was a new teacher, and I wanted people to like care about what I was doing. Having been through like many years and seen some things and experienced some things, it's gotten to the point where I go in every day and I do the best that I can with what's happening that day. And some days, you know, wild stuff happens and you need to deal with it, or there's stuff happening in the building beyond your control and you can't do the things you plan to do that day. All kinds of stuff like that happens a lot. I've learned that a lot. The unexpected, you need to expect the unexpected as an educator, is what I've found in my career so far. And people outside can say what they want. Even the people inside can say what they want. But what it boils down to is I'm in a room with 21 kids, and my job is to do the best thing I can to teach them the things that they're supposed to learn or be exposed to in that year in my room. And that's where I've landed. And I hope that other people land there too, so that they can zero in on what they need to do and what's most important for their classroom and their kids. Which now brings me over into like the next level of that is I've got a great administrative team. So my principal, my vice principal, this has been their philosophy this year and last year, that do what you can with what you have. Stop worrying about all these other things. Do what's in your control. Do what's best for the kids. Be kind to yourself, be kind to them, be kind to your colleagues. And this is one of the best things that I've heard an administrator say to me. And I personally believe that they're being authentic in their message to us. So there's no like, it's not like I'm going to say this because it's going to make you feel good, but you know, read between the lines. You better still da 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 da. I don't get that from them. I get that they're really being genuine and authentic about stop worrying about all this other stuff. Go into your room, take care of your kids, be good to yourself and your colleagues. If you need help, ask for it. We'll do what we can to help you. And on Monday, when we were all out, a bunch of principals came to our picket location to show their support. My principal and my vice principal were there in a crew of other leaders, and they brought us food and beverage. And, you know, they stood on the line with us, and like, it was cool. It was cool to see my bosses standing there, showing me that they care about what we're doing. They care about the system. And that was their way of showing us that they're behind us and they support us, even though it's difficult for everyone. But that meant a lot to me. So that's a really cool thing that I will remember and share down the road. So when I get to the end of my career, even before then, and people ask me about what happened during this time, you know, I'll say, I was on the line, I was walking the streets, and next thing you know, my principal, my vice principal are there, and you know, they brought us food, they brought us drink, they hung out for a bit before they had to go, and it wasn't just them. There were several principals, and even now, telling you this story, when I was asking other people, like when I said to other people I know in the system, "Hey, did your principal come to the line?" And they're like, "No." Why do you ask? And then I felt so bad, like saying, "Well, mine did." And they're like, "What? Your principal was there?" I'm like, "Yeah, they came, they dropped stuff off, they wished us well." And then it's like, whoa. So even like from that perspective, I'm grateful for them having done that because other principals didn't do that. And it kind of sucks if you're a staff member and you're out on strike and you're stressed about losing money for the day, not being in your classroom with your kids, feeling a little weird about doing it. Like, I have to be honest, I have to be honest, Chris. I felt really weird, like getting on a bus and being driven to a place where I would get off the bus and then walk the streets with a sign. Like, it was weird. But I did it with all my other colleagues, and that's a whole other layer. Was your principal there? Did your principal show up to show that they support what you're doing? They support you. I don't know. I have to tell you though, I did tell my admin. I did tell them I was very appreciative, and I thanked them for that. They didn't have to do that, but they did, and I appreciate it. And it's something that this is a story I will tell as the years go on, even though they're not part of my union.
Yeah.
Did,
Our admin was out, supported us. Backtracking the question of the two or three is that some groups. So part of my kaleidoscopic memory is because here's things that kind of were getting in the way of when you ask, like, have you done the two, the three, whatever. Some jurisdictions have done three. Some jurisdictions have done two. So this would be the full day out of work. Sorry, full day out of school, still working the picket line. We've also had other pickets that we've done that are still part of our action, but it's done during lunches or after school. So, or even before school. So, for instance, one of the ones that we did this week was going out. We went out and we connected with our OECTA brothers and sisters and walked the line with them. We carried our signs, we had conversations, we chatted about our experiences, so we got to connect, and that was really cool. It was really cool. And what was interesting about that is that we had members in different pockets, kind of all over the place. So we had some that were at a school close to us, some that are a little further away. So we got a chance to connect more broadly with other people's experiences, other teachers' experiences, other educators' experiences of going on the picket line. That was pretty fascinating stuff.
Hey, thanks for standing with OECTA the other
Yeah.
day. I saw that picture. I appreciate that. Um, Also, I want to say I've done 2 information pickets
Yeah.
before school. So I just wanted to know you personally. I know that OSSTF has done like rotating stuff,
Yeah.
but I wasn't sure about you. So OECTA has just done one everybody, and then I've done my 2 pickets that were
Yeah.
part of the pre-strike. And I hope tomorrow, no, sorry, not tomorrow, Monday, ETFO is going to be out on the street, and I hope that I can support them in one way or another. I'm not sure how yet. I don't know. I'm not privy to where they're doing their job action, where they're picketing. But I mean, whether it's before school or after school, if I know where to go, I'd be happy to drive by the location, show support or whatever, depending on my time. But it's in my head. Like, I'm very aware, and I would like to show them my support.
Cool Deans. I think it's a good thing to do. I think it's a good thing to do. For me, what it really came down to was getting to chat it up. sort of getting a little, because despite the fact that OSSTF is big, getting a little bit outside the bubble and being able to feel that energy of connecting with other like-minded individuals that and some unlike-minded individuals, but to be able to have the conversation on the picket was pretty cool. And we had similar experiences, or I've had similar experiences, where the when we didn't get on a bus, but we did go to a different location. And at the other location, we were connected with another school, and it was at a major intersection in our region. And there were, sorry, there were lots of honks. You can interpret honks however you want. It's a very soft pole, right? You don't really know, and so you can sort of make eye contact with the individual driving by. Sometimes the honks were a wave and a thumbs up. Sometimes the honks were a wave and a middle finger salute. Same thing when you hear some whoops and hollers. Again, you'd have to sort of take it to that next level of communication, make eye contact, and actually see the look on the person's face. Did have a really good conversation with one individual. This dude sort of pulled up in it was sort of in a major traffic space, major intersection, and started talking to me from the street. And I just said, come on around. There was a little plaza there that we were positioned beside. I said, come into the parking lot. And I just I hunkered down at the window. And the individual, I was kind of mind blown about this, but I guess this happens. He asked flat out, he said, like, so what's this strike about? And you sort of like to approach the window and actually talk to someone. Of course, I mean, there's some risk involved with that. You don't know you don't know if you're gonna be put on blast. You don't know, you just don't know. But I was feeling a little bit of connection, feeling like I wanted to talk about it. I felt like there was something of value to talking to someone that asks what seems to be a really obvious question, but it sounded genuine. I ended up having about a 15-20 minute conversation with the dude, and the dude revealed that his kids, so we were not at our school, we were at a different school in our board, that his kids go to that school. And he flat out said, he said, you know what? I had no idea. I really had no idea of the depth of this and the sort of complexity of it. His one of his kids has an exceptionality, and the thing that he flat out laid out, he said, the how far educators go to keep me in the loop and to demonstrate that sort of that care and compassion in a way that he was saying was parental, like they were doing the job. And he said, I could say it's a big pain in the ass to get 10 phone calls in a day. He said, but without if the system didn't have the capacity to connect with me in that way, and this isn't standard across the board, this isn't what every educator is doing. He said, in his experience, being able to have that kind of contact and the richness of the information so that he can help his child, fulfill their role as a student, fulfill their role as an individual, as a citizen, basically feel connected to the school. I'm on board. I get it. He goes, keep doing what you're doing. So that was a cool. I mean, we had other people too that were just, if they had eggs, they could have thrown them. They could have. They were not having it. But I realized, if ever I'm, when I'm reminiscing about this particular time in education, the thing that will really stand out for me, if I take the actual other side of the negotiating table out of the loop, our current minister and our current premier, if I take that out of the loop, it'll be the opportunities to have some what I felt heartfelt, compassionate, and supportive conversations with people that I might never have made contact before. So the parents and our partners in education. I dig it.
Strike captain. Whenever I would see a strike captain, I'd laugh and think of you.
I got to meet. That was the other thing that was really cool. Shout out to Mary, who's strike captain at one of the schools I was at. It was cool to meet someone who was doing a similar job and to listen how in some ways dissimilar it was, like some of the things that they're having to go through. Like it looked similar, but there were things that they were instructed to do and how they sort of comported themselves that is different than us. What also made it interesting, it was that we had already done 2 days of action, and this was their first. So
Right.
this is their first, and that was interesting too. So,
The whole thing's interesting.
hmm
The whole thing's interesting, and I don't know how it's going to play out, but I'm waiting to see, I guess.
it's ongoing, right? And this is what makes some of the conversations with my colleagues, my brothers and sisters in our union, is the slow realization of the long game that's being played out here,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and really having to keep that at kind of like the front of mind. You can't let go of that in this particular situation. You have to keep that as part of it, because there's no shortcut through this particular conversation. None. I called it. That's a
Oh,
bad way to frame it. This It's because it doesn't feel like a conversation. There's no shortcut through this action right now.
no, there's no shortcut.
Yeah. So
So that's where we're at.
yeah.
This was this is season 3, episode 16. Do you have something that you can show the people?
Can I talk about one more thing just as I'm finishing it up?
No. Let me
Ah,
let me be honest with you for a moment. Yeah, of course you
I
can.
love it. I would expect nothing less. Um, I tweeted something out today that I'm hoping will get a little bit of traction. I don't know if it will. I don't know if it will. But it was a conversation that I recently had with some pretty good friends of mine, talking about what makes a good school. And they're trying to decide if their child is going to remain in Catholic school. No, no, no. I am not setting up a binary competition between Catholic. Here's the disclaimer: there is no binary conversation here between competition between picking Catholic over public or public over Catholic in secondary. There we go. I just wanted to say that part. But what made it interesting was the question about is a certain school a good school? And I feel like that conversation happens a lot. People ask people that. They want to know. They want to know if the offerings are good, as in, like, I feel like it goes unmediated and unmitigated. And what was kind of fascinating to me about the process was that my initial response was I wanted to say something about the school that they were asking about. Like, something automatically in me wanted to offer some sort of advice. Maybe that was the teacher side, could have been the clef side. I don't know. And then I kind of held back, asking, what was kind of on their list, like what were they kind of looking for? And in both cases, they didn't really have a list. They were just asking for the benefit of my experience, and I became
Hmm.
kind of cagey about it. At that point, I didn't really want to say. I didn't really want to say. I didn't want to sort of commit, because I felt like it would be too leading. So this is what I posted out to Twitter, just that idea of what are the indicators of a good school. And I didn't push into the how do we measure them, but what's the stuff that you automatically kind of jump on, whether you're an educator or otherwise? What are the things that kind of automatically pop up as the indicators of a good school? And maybe what would be better to focus on? So that's yeah, that's that's what I also posted out this week I just put it out on my feed on Twitter. What are you wondering this week? What are you wondering about? And I had some cool ads to that. But this is something that I've been wondering about this week. Is that what are the indicators of a good school? What are we comfortable? What are we comfortable with calling out as the indicators of a good school?
Interesting. It it's tough as well. Like, I've had people ask me the same thing, and it's tough because
Do you feel like the convo just kind of happens a lot? I mean, in house and out of house, like it's that kind of like almost like a generalized conversation, like what is a good school?
yes, and what is a good school like can look different from a parent's perspective and a teacher's perspective,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah,
I don't, do you have a minute and I can take this on a little bit and
Do it
work
if
through it?
yeah, I got the time. If play it out a
Okay.
little bit. I'm I'm super curious about this particular conversation.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because so as a teacher, do I believe that my school is a good school?
Well,
And
that's a whole other combo. Cool, man.
that's where I my head goes first
Okay.
because I have the inside scoop.
Yeah.
I have the inside scoop. Well, here I can give you a real life example. I got a call last spring. Got a call last spring. Actually, got an email from a mom of a student that I had taught at another school, and the mom said to me, "Can are you able to talk on the phone? Would you mind calling me so we can talk about schools because it looks like we're moving schools and we want to talk to you about your school." So I was like, "Oh, okay." So I said, "Yes, I can do that." So I called the mom and talked to her, and she basically explained that, you know, they're looking to move, which means that they're going to be moving schools when they move houses, and they have some interest in some houses that are in the catchment area of my current school. And she was like, "Is your school a good school? Like, should I be sending my daughter to your school?" And so you can imagine, I was like, whoa, whoa, this is crazy. I said, number one, you need to do what's right for you and your daughter. So my perspective, and I said my perspective is skewed. I'm happy where I'm at. I believe that the staff at the school that I currently work at and the admin are we are working together to make learning happen for our students. And she's like, "That's cool, but like what are some of the can you dig deeper?" I said, "Of course." So, one of the main things I said was we have a lot of newcomers at our school. So every class has, a large amount of students who are learning the English language, who are not proficient in English. And so the dynamic of our school is different than any other school I've ever been at. And it's not one class, it's every single class in the building has the same kind of makeup. I said, so that is unique to our building, and we're a large population. We have a lot of people here. So it's a big school. It's a school that has a huge population of newcomers and English language learners. So these are things that this is like the profile of my school. And then came the dreaded question about EQAO scores, and which is public, so anybody can find EQAO scores for any school in Ontario, any public school in Ontario. And I said they're not stellar. So there are other schools, up the street, down the street, that have wicked EQAO scores. But I said if you take into account what I just kind of mentioned, the like English language learners and things of that nature. Not that those children can't do well, but they struggle with the language, and the test is in a language that they don't really know. So there's some things going on there, right? And I said that's what our school is at the moment. But I said there's no shortage of people here working hard to change that and working hard to make sure our students are learning. So I said, that's really it. Like, there's not much more I can say. Um, you know, I explained that you talk to another teacher, you might get a different response, right? And she said that's understandable, but she said that, her dealings with me were good. She felt like, I did everything I could to serve her child and the class, to keep the parents up to speed on what's going on, and provide them with information that is necessary for them to do their part at home. And so she felt she could have this conversation with me. Now, having said all that, I have not seen this student appear at my school. So either they didn't move, or they moved, but they found a house somewhere else in another catchment area. I don't know, but it was interesting. Just like, is your school a good school? I think I saw your tweet and I just kept going because I couldn't touch it. I didn't have anything to say because it's such a complicated topic. How do you define good? Like you're asking, how do you define good? I know some people, they all they want is to look at that EQAO score, and that's where they're going to send their kid. They don't consider anything else, and there's a lot more to consider than just that score.
Someone did respond. Melanie White, she's on Twitter. She said, "Wonder if it's EQAO scores, public perception shaped by media representation, athletic performance, products of student work promoted as evidence of learning, post-secondary, usually university acceptance rates, access to technology in school, and other markers of hashtag inequity." So I'm asking back just whether or not if these are some of the auto responses that she's been kind of encountered, or if this is the should be talked about more responses. But kind of touched on a little bit what you were saying there.
It's complicated, man.
It totally is.
And then sometimes, here's another good one for you. This one blew me away actually at first, but then not so much after. So I once encountered a parent who had 2 kids in the school I was working at. And I had taught the older child, and it was a year or 2 after I had taught the older child, and I saw the mom in the hallway, and I said, "Hey, how's it going? How you doing?" And I said, "Is your older son looking forward to next year?" And she's like, "Very much so, but for reasons that I don't think you understand." And I was like, whoa, what do you mean? She's like, "He's leaving." I said, "What do you mean he's leaving?" She's like, the environment he's in, the kids he's with at this school is just not working for him. And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, he's been with this cohort since like grade 1. And she said, it's just not working. There's too much conflict. Every year we're trying to deal with the conflict. We're trying to, teach him how to be more like of an open person and, to turn the other cheek. And it's just, he's done. He's exhausted. He wants to go, he's going to go to such and such school down the street where he can just start new friends, new teachers, new building. And that's how he's looking forward to that." And I was a little sad, feeling like we had failed him in a way. But then I was also really happy because the mom's like, "Hey, it's not like we're leaving on good terms. He's decided that he's done being with the same group of people every year, all year. He wants to do something different." And this is not a family it's not a family that's constantly in conflict in the building. It's not like that. It's more of like behind closed doors conversations at home and talking about friends and making new friends. And it was a different vibe to it, a different feel. And I said, "What about the younger brother?" She goes, "Oh, he's still going to come here. And I'm still going to volunteer here. And like the only thing that's going to change is my older son's going to go to the school down the street because he feels he needs that change before he finishes up elementary school and goes to high school." I was like, good for him. And it wasn't, so for him, it wasn't that the school he was currently at wasn't a good school. It was just years of dealing with certain things that he just said to his parents, can I go to another school? Like, I don't want to hang out with these people anymore. I feel like I've drifted from them. I feel like it's just this isn't working for me. I'm not feeling so great about this. And the parents were like, "Yeah, we can do that." And it was just interesting because that was the first time I had ever experienced something like that, right? And it's like I haven't spoken to the mom. I see her on Twitter, but we don't really talk. And but I would love to know how he's doing and whether he likes it at his new place. I think he does because he's not returned to the school. And they're also, this family's not a flip-flop family. Like, I'm sure, I remember her telling me they spent like a good year talking about this. They spent a large chunk of time really looking at pros, cons, sleep on it, talk to this person about it. And at the end, they came to the conclusion that he was going to go to another school. And it wasn't like, thank God he's leaving. I was sad. I was like, that's too bad, because in the year I taught him, a real leader, really empathetic, nice kid, like just overall a nice person, studious, athletic, musically inclined, risk taker, like a good kid. And it just wasn't working out for him. And it took years of not working out and then another year of discussing and debating. And good for him. He made the choice and his parents supported him, and I hope he's doing well. But what is a good school? What is a good fit? You know, it's it's like goes from person to person. You just don't know.
You know
And
what's
that's it.
I got it just something that came my way this week. It was talking about I think I was listening to a podcast. It was from a podcast. I think it was On Being. I think it was in the On Being podcast, and one of the individuals that was talking with Krista Tippett in there was talking about the 200-year relationship and this concept that for whatever's going on kind of right now, so you just pick a moment right now in time and you think about the oldest person that you know that is kind of connected to you in a way that they could have some influence over you. And you go back to their birth date. And then you think about the youngest person you know right now. And you sort of project forward beyond the time that you're going to be a part of this conversation, this moment, whatever, to their age, their possible, I guess you could say the amount of time they're going to live, 80 years, 90 years. And you take that pocket of time and you say that whatever occurs right now in this decision has been influenced from that far back and could have a ripple effect moving forward into the end of the other people that you have in your sphere of influence. And it kind of really grounded me in these conversations about change and even changing school and sort of trying to make the best decisions with our current education system and how we relate to each other. That when we're sitting in those meetings with the families and we're sort of trying to articulate and just discuss, even if it's about what's a good school, that there's a whole bigger context that this is kind of echoing in. And I know that I won't know that I've experienced sometimes we're too close to the page in making the decision and we have to take into account these other things. I don't know if we have to take into account 200 years, but I just really liked that metaphor about what we can't see in the moment when we're making these decisions. I think definitely in education, we are tuned quite closely to that, understanding that, the changes that are looked to be made right now are going to have a reverberation. Some of it is speculative, some of it is actual. We know you do this will happen. But our relationship to this conversation is going to play out long after you and I are teaching. And I think that's what kind of really raises the value of it for me in this particular. In general, I think the metaphor has raised the value on the relationships and the connection with the community and kind of that reaching out and making authenticity a core value in, in a good school. I don't know. We're dipping into our next episode at this point, I feel.
I doubt it. We shift
Okay.
so quick. It's.
I can show you if you want. You want to see?
I'd love to see it.
Okay.
The fourth wall. Cool. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah, you're welcome, dude.
Okay, buddy. Well, have a great week.
I will. Busy times. I'm sure we'll connect during the week,
Oh, for
and
sure.
I look forward to chatting next week, dude.
Okay, me too. Have a good
Cool.
one.
You too. Ciao.